Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Angie. It's nice to have you guys here. Today I have another book video. I am reading books at a crazy rate. I would say an alarming rate, but I'm actually quite happy with it. I am just reading so much, so I feel like I just filmed one of these videos, but I've already read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books. 7 of them are actual like novels. 1 is more of a picture book, but I've still read a lot. And I find that these videos get quite long the more books that I have to cover in them. So I'm going to try to do these videos every like 6 to 8 books that I read so that they aren't that long. So I have my list of books, I have my Kindle, and then I have the 2 books that I actually have in hard copy. So I'm going to start with those. The first one, if you watched my My Life in Books tag that I filmed a few videos back, you will have seen that I made the embarrassing confession, I was a bit embarrassed by it, that I hadn't read Jane Eyre. I'd started it, but I'd never read it in its entirety, cover to cover. And it was on my to-be-read pile, and I was really wanting to read it. So at last, I can say I have read it. And I still, now that I've read it, I really don't know what took me so long, because I absolutely loved it. I knew I was going to love it. I've seen a million different film and TV and stage adaptations, and I knew that I loved the story, and the book is always better than the film. So I figured if I loved the film as much, I would love the book, and I absolutely did. Jane Eyre, I think, is absolutely timeless. It's so modern in so many ways, in the way that Jane is written, in the way that the other characters are written, the plot, the overall story. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It lived up to my very high expectations based on the films that I've seen. So I read this pretty much, I think it took me about 3 days, but I'd say the last half of it I read in one sitting. At last, I have finally read it. I can now say with authority, I feel like, which film version is my favorite and is the best. The one with Toby Stephens and Ruth Wilson, FYI. But yeah, absolutely loved it. The other physical book that I read is a photo book. There's a bit of text, but for the most part, it's just beautiful photos. And this is by Georgiana Lane, and it's called London in Bloom. I picked this book up about a month ago now. I ordered a few books from Amazon that are kind of London picture books. I absolutely love this. So this isn't really a like read kind of book. It's more of a sit and look at the pretty pictures kind of a book. So it's just lots of beautiful photos of London and scenes around London. So I absolutely loved this. I follow her on Instagram and just thought, beautiful flowers in London. I have to have this book. Then going to my sticky note and all the books on the Kindle. Black Rabbit Hall by Eve Chase. I don't even know how, there were some good books that, there's some, I mean all of these books were really good, but Black Rabbit Hall, I still think about that book. And it's one I've read like the longest ago, which really was only like probably a couple weeks at the rate that I'm reading these. But how would I describe Black Rabbit Hall? I think if you like Jane Eyre, you might like Black Rabbit Hall. It's got that kind of gothic mystery to it. It is kind of set between 2 time periods. So there's a girl in the present day who's looking for a venue for her wedding, and she remembers this home from her childhood that her mother used to take her to, called Black Rabbit Hall. And so as an adult, she's now going back and trying to find it. And so she goes back there, and all these memories start to like come up, and she starts questioning a lot of things. And then she gets sucked into the story of the people who lived at Black Rabbit Hall in the, I think it's like the 60s, 70s. So it goes back and forth then between the young woman in the present day and then the eldest daughter who lived in the house with her family in the 70s. I don't want to say too much, but I think if you read The 13th Tale by Diana Setterfield, very similar vibe, which again, The 13th Tale always kind of reminded me a bit of Jane Eyre. There's just something about creaky old manor houses in various places in England. Black Rabbit Hall is set in Cornwall. Yeah, there's just something about kind of creaky old houses with family mysteries that just always brings me back to Jane Eyre. This isn't really like a romance. There is romance in it, but it's more of just a young woman trying to get answers to questions and uncover the mystery of this house. So I don't want to say more than that because I really don't want to give too much away. But if you're looking for something that's just a little bit dark, but not too dark and depressing, and something that's a bit mysterious and suspenseful, but not scary and not going to keep you up at night, this is more about family drama and family secrets than scary ghosts in the attic kind of a thing. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. Eve Chase has a new book out called The Glass House. I don't know if it's available in the US yet because it just came out in the UK. This is the problem with falling in love with so many British authors. I always have to wait a little bit longer for their books to be released over here. This book was from several years ago. I first came across this book in Oxford in 2015 when I was visiting, and I saw it in Blackwell's bookshop. I snapped a picture because I thought it sounded interesting, but I was being really careful about how many books I bought because I was going to be there for 3 months, and I knew myself, and I knew if I bought every book I thought looked good, I'd never get them back to Arizona with me. So I kind of snapped a picture thinking when I get back to Arizona, I'll look it up and read it then, and then just kind of forgot. So I was going back through my camera roll all the way back to 2015 and saw that picture and thought, oh, I should look up that book. And so I did, and I got it, and I'm so glad because it was so good. But now she's got other books that I can read while I wait for The Glass House to become available in the US. So I've kind of stepped away from Eve Chase for several books, but I think I'm going to try to get one of her other ones on my Kindle soon. The next book, another mystery. This is by, I think they're a husband and wife author team. They go by the pen name Nicci French. The book is called Losing You. And I saw this on Shannon, her channel, Pages and Polish. I saw her do a book talk on this. I didn't watch it in its entirety because I didn't want to know the spoilers, because just from what I heard from her initial description, it sounded really good. So if you want to know more than I'm going to tell you about this book, you can go watch Shannon's video. I was really intrigued, and so I looked it up. I got this from my library. It was pretty good. Shannon mentioned this in her video, and then I forgot, and then I was confused when my Kindle was telling me there were like 3 hours left in the chapter. And then I remembered, oh yeah, Shannon said the book is told in one chapter, which for some people could be a little irritating, because if you're one of those people who's like, I'll just read at the end of the chapter and then I'll stop, you have to like force yourself to stop in the middle of the story if you're going to take a break. But it's also short enough that if you have like a nice afternoon that you can just sit and read, you can read it all in one sitting. That's what I did. It's about a woman and her family. They're about to go on vacation at Christmas. Everyone's kind of pretty excited about it. They're going to Florida. It's set in the UK. And on the day that they're supposed to leave, the main character's teenage daughter doesn't come home. No one kind of takes it seriously at first. The mom is trying to say like, she's still a minor, she's missing, you need to take this seriously. And the police at first are like, yeah, but she probably just, ran away. But it doesn't sit right with the mom, and so she really kind of forces them to take it seriously. It's told pretty much in real time, which I think is one of the reasons why it's all in one chapter, because it's minute by minute what happens in the search for her daughter. I thought overall it was really well done. I didn't mind the whole told in one chapter. The ending felt slightly rushed, but overall I still really enjoyed it, and I think it's just a really good kind of mystery suspense. This one is a bit more suspenseful because there's that urgency of the clock is ticking kind of a thing. As I got drawn into the book, I was reading it kind of faster and like tapping to the next page faster and faster because I was just really tearing through this book. So really, really enjoyed that. The next book, switching things a little bit, I switched to a romantic comedy. I switched to The Royal Wedding by Melanie Summers. It's a trilogy, and so The Royal Treatment is book 1, and I already have the 3rd book. So The Royal Wedding and The Royal Treatment, which I did mention in a previous book video. These are just fun, lighthearted, royal romantic comedies. Laugh out loud, bit sexy. There is adult content in this one, we'll say that, but fun and lighthearted. So I really enjoyed all of the various love scenes because there's a very hilarious love scene in this book that I don't want to spoil anything and give too many details, but I was laughing so hard through so many scenes. I would say these books are, because I'm definitely kind of promoting the whole series, go back and read Royal Treatment and then read Royal Wedding. I'm going to read the 3rd one probably in the next book or so on my to be read list. As I was reading this one in particular, I kept thinking, if you are a fan of The Christmas Prince on Netflix and that whole like series, I think you'd really enjoy this. This is definitely a bit more adult than that series, because that series like was pretty cozy and pretty tame in terms of love scenes and stuff like that. But that vibe of just what we envision royal life to be like, but then, you know, notched up a bit. As someone who has studied various royal families for my PhD research, there's definitely a lot of creative license in terms of how royal life is depicted, but it's just really fun. And as someone who is a fan of like The Christmas Prince, The Prince and Me, Princess Diaries, you know, with Anne Hathaway, I really enjoy these books. So if you are a fan of those types of things but want a slightly more adult version, I would recommend these. So I can't wait to read the 3rd one. I had really high expectations for The Royal Wedding book 2 because I really did enjoy book 1 so much, and then I ended up liking book 2 even better. When you already love these characters and then the author goes and makes you fall in love with them even more in book 2, and that's exactly what Melanie Summers did with The Royal Wedding, so highly, highly recommend that. The next book is the book Verity by Colleen Hoover. I will be thinking about this book for a while. I feel like this book and Black Rabbit Hall were the 2 books of this latest collection, that just really stood out as far as books that made me stop and go, wow. How much do I want to say about Verity? Okay, it is a suspense. It is also, I would say, bordering on thriller. I think in a film it could be done pretty creepy, but in a good way. I would say from what I've read and from what I'm aware of in terms of reading the books and seeing film adaptations, there's kind of a Girl on the Train, Gone Girl type vibe, just in terms of that like eeriness of who is really what they seem to be and what is really going on kind of a thing. I'm really struggling because I don't want to give anything away, but the basic plot, what you'd read on the back of the book. The basic premise, the book follows Lowen, who is an author living in New York, kind of struggling, and she gets called in to take on the project of completing a best-selling series by the author Verity Crawford, who has been in some kind of mystery accident. No one really knows what exactly happened. Lowen goes up to the family home to go through her office and all of her notes in order to complete the series. Then the mystery kind of takes off from there. I just found that it was, I just finished reading this one on Saturday, so I'm filming this on Wednesday, and I finished it just about 4 or 5 days ago, and I'm still like, wow. By the end of the book, you are really thinking about who was right, who was wrong, who made the right choice, would you have made the same choice? You know, there's just so many questions, but in a good way, in a way that like the author has done their job of like really creating this very complex kind of story in terms of moral and ethical choices and things like that. So I don't want to say more than that because I don't want to give anything away, but I was gripped from the beginning. I think I read 2 chapters the day before on like Friday, and then I spent all day Saturday, late morning, early afternoon, just tearing through this book. I could not put it down. Oh, it was so good. And then also on Saturday, I finished Verity and took about a couple hour break, and then I started reading the next book, which is The Return. So this is another book that I saw on Shannon's channel and thought it sounded interesting. I liked the premise, and so I didn't watch the rest of the video because I didn't want any spoilers. I nearly scared myself so badly I didn't fall asleep that night. This book is creepy with a capital C. I don't know that I kind of talk about it in my last weekly vlog. I'm not sure I would call it a horror book. I don't really read horror, so it was horror enough for me. I would say it's a suspense thriller with some horror elements. In Shannon's video, she mentioned that there was a supernatural element to it. I would agree with that. And I don't want to give away too much more than that, but in my mind, when I hear supernatural, based on the books that I read, I go to vampire. That's not what this is. And that's kind of what the premise, when you read the book description, will make you think. That's not what it is. So I won't tell you what it is, but I will say that's what it's not. It's not a vampire supernatural book. It definitely is more allegorical. I think as I kind of reach the end, there's definitely a lot in there about loss and about grief told through this kind of suspense thriller narrative. So I did really enjoy it. I was kind of reading quite quickly through the end and glossing over the really scary bits, the bits that I knew. I scare easily. So if you read horror, I don't think you'll find this book that scary, probably. But if you're like me and you don't really read a lot of horror, I think this will have some of those elements in it. I think if they turned this into a movie, if they adapted this to film, it would be scary AF. I wouldn't recommend reading this super late at night like I did, but it was really good. The mystery was really good. I felt like the plot and the character development was really well done, and overall I really did enjoy it. And then the final book is Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. And Queenie I was reading as part of Beth's book club. It's the May pick. What can I say about Queenie? Everyone has to read it. That's what I have to say about it. I kind of put off reading it. I wasn't sure, because I wouldn't say it's not a romantic comedy. And I've kind of been bouncing between mystery thrillers and light, fluffy rom-coms. And I would say Queenie is definitely contemporary women's fiction, but with, as I found out, with a lot of comedy in it. But there are some darker themes and elements in the book. The character Queenie goes through a lot. There's a lot of trauma that she's dealing with. I feel like I've seen the book get compared to Bridget Jones's Diary, and I don't think that's an adequate comparison, because Bridget Jones is definitely much more lighthearted. Like, they're both about 20-somethings in London trying to kind of figure their life out, but that's about where the comparisons end. Queenie is a Black woman, so it is also centered around kind of the Black experience in London. So there's a lot of really interesting things that get brought up alongside just the journey of Queenie herself. And there's no words, because it was just so good, and you really you just fall in love with the character of Queenie, even when you don't agree, and even when you see how her past trauma is impacting her current relationships, and even when she makes choices that you're like, no, don't do that. You still absolutely understand why she makes the choices that she does. And the whole cast of characters, they're all fantastic. The conversations that get brought up in terms of race issues and mental health issues and toxic relationships, and just, there's a lot. And so that's why I say there's probably a bunch of kind of trigger warnings that would come along with this book for some people. It's just so worth reading and or listening to. I absolutely loved the audiobook, and I would highly recommend the audiobook because the narrator, Siobhan Marks, I believe is her name, does all the different accents and dialects and really brings all of those characters to life in a way that I, as an American, would not be able to hear all of these different dialects in my head as I'm reading it. I think this is the first audiobook I've listened to in its entirety. I've started audiobooks in the past and not completed them. I am definitely a book in my hand, even if it's my Kindle kind of a person, and I can read books far faster than I can listen to them. But this book was so gripping that even though it's a 9+ hour audiobook, I think I listened to it in about 3 days. I'm sad it's done. Like, I'm sad it's over because I really did fall in love with Queenie and all of her friends and her family. Really, really do highly, highly, highly recommend that book. Probably one of the best books I've read all year so far. I think I would say if you read one book from this video, I would recommend Queenie. It's not necessarily that it was my most favorite book of all of them, because I don't like picking favorites, because I like them all. They're all very different, but I think in terms of the one that, like, I feel like we don't promote authors of color as much as we should, and we don't read, most of us don't read stories that far outside of our own kind of lived experience. And so, yeah, I just think everyone needs to read Queenie. That's my stance on that. So those are all of the books for this latest collection of books I've been reading lately. I enjoyed filming this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I'd really, really appreciate that. Subscribe if you're not subscribed for more book-related content. In addition to my books I've been reading lately videos, I am also doing weekly vlogs as well as sit-down videos sharing kind of behind the scenes of writing my second novel. So lots of book-related stuff happening here on the channel these days. So subscribe if you're not subscribed so you don't miss out on any of those. Say hi in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of these books or if you're going to read any of these books. I'd love to know that. I will see you all soon in the next video. Thank you very much for watching this one. Bye-bye.